Hello everyone and welcome to class training for today. My name is Samuel Martin, I will be your presenter and today we're going through some reports in class. So I've got a little slide up here. This is just a bit of information about GoToWebinar, the software we're using today, which is slightly different to Zoom. So I've just got a bit of information there for you about GoToWebinar, including how to join audio and questions. So if you can see the little questions pane there in your control panel, you can submit any questions you have to us there. Okay, welcome to training today for standard reports. Now there are three types of reports in class. Three different ways that we can get data from class, the standard reports, which we'll be talking about today. There are also what we call drill down reports and DIY reports, which we'll be going through next week. So today we're going through these standard reports. Okay, so a quick question for you. A question for you today is how much experience do you have with reports? How much experience do you have with running reports in class? Okay, if everyone just wants to hit one of those answers and submit, we will have a quick look at the results of that in a bit, and that will inform a bit of the training session that we're going to do today. Okay, while we're waiting for that, I will acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, coming to you from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I will recognise that the lands of Australia were never ceded and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Okay, so with that done, we will have a really quick overview of today's session. However, before I do that, allow me to introduce Alex Ariti and Oliver Moore, who are both on the ICT team here at CLCs Australia. Alex is facilitating our session today. Hello, Alex.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for introducing me. I'm going to quickly share the results of the poll. So hopefully everybody can see that on the screen. I am very surprised that none of you can work on the class help desk, although I did throw that one in just as a bit of a red herring, I think. But welcome to our report session today, and we're glad to have you.
Thanks, Alex. We also have Oliver Moore, also from the ICT team. So if you get if you pop a question into the chat and you get a response from Oliver, that's a legit response. Hi, Oliver.
Sam, hi everyone. Looking forward to training today.
Great, thanks, Oliver. Okay, let's crack on with the overview of today's session. We'll do a quick introduction to class reports, and I will just quickly go back to those results of the poll. That was interesting. I was wondering if most of the people here today were kind of new to reports. I'm kind of glad to see that I think it was about 2/3 of people had none or a little bit of experience with reports. That's kind of good because we're kind of starting at the start. Well, that was the intention of today anyway. So we'll do an introduction to class reports and how they work, a few other things there. Then we'll go through some client reports, some service reports, some NLAP reports, and then we're getting into some of the more interesting things. Things like telling stories with data and heat mapping, and then we get into some of the more mundane stuff, printing and exporting, finding documentation and getting help. Okay. Let's start with an introduction to class reports. I'm going to flip over to class. Here's my class. So I've just logged into class. So if I want to find reports, I would just come down here to the bottom left, the main navigation menu, and click on reports and accountability. If you don't see that in your version of class, that means your role doesn't allow you to see reports or work with reports. if you want that changed, you would need to contact the class administrator for your center. Okay, once you click on reports and accountability, you click on reports, and that brings up our list of reports, and it can be fairly extensive. So you can see in the bottom left, there's 65 in here. You may not have that many. You may have more depending on what has happened at your center with reports in the past. Now, a couple of quick things here. No one needs to know how to use all of these reports. However, once you know the basics, then you can start to understand how the other reports work as well. Also note, some people may not actually get access to all of the reports as well. So if you do want access to more of the reports if you see reports here today and you don't have access to them and you want access to them, again, contact your class administrator. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what we see in our list of reports here. Again, there's 65. And I'll have a quick scroll down. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. All of these different reports, and we'll be going through this and kind of explaining most of how this all works. I will bring to your attention this column here, format. If we have a look at the result, at what's in this column, most of these are standard reports until we get down to about here where we see the drill down reports. So again, today we're not covering the drill down reports. That's next week. We're going through the standard reports. Okay, so another thing I want to stop and say here is that standard reports should be your first call if you're trying to get data out of class. There are DIY reports. Again, we're going through those next week. And they are very powerful. You can get almost any data out of class using those. And oftentimes what people do, and I'm including myself in this, I'm definitely guilty of this, is that people dive straight into a DIY report and they kind of complicate things. So try to keep in mind that standard reports should be your first port of call. If you're trying to find data, a standard report may, you may be able to get that data with a standard report, and if so, that will make your life that little bit easier. Okay, there's a couple of other things to go through here. I'm going to flick back to my little slide. So the naming conventions, I'll go through that now, and then I'll get onto the cheat codes later on. That's just a quick little thing there. Okay, so the naming conventions we've got for reports. Okay, so here are the names of our reports and the type of report it is. This kind of a bit of a there's the description there. Okay, so all of the reports start with a letter of the alphabet and then a number, and as you can see, that one at the very top is C01. So there are no A or B reports. We start at C. C stands for client. So this is part of, well, that's part of the naming convention. The letter will stand for something. And I want to point out here these D reports. Services for DIPT. I just really quickly want to mention the D reports. DIPT stands for Data Informed Planning Toolkit. I hope that means more to you than it does to me. It should mean more to me, but anyway, never mind that. So these reports, if you have a look over here, this is an S01, which is another standard report that we will be having a pretty good look at later. Another one of these D reports, it's a copy of the C02, and this one is a copy of the C03. That one's a copy of the S01. Those reports just format slightly differently. The results in that report format slightly differently to the other reports, or the reports that they are copies of. The other thing I need to mention is that they're not really ready. They're not really usable. They may be usable for one kind of thing, heat mapping, which I'll go over later. But we'd recommend using the standard reports rather than the D reports, whether that be an S or a C report. use those rather than the D. Then we get down to the M reports. I just need to mention something about these very quickly as well. M stands for management. The reason these exist is because of your state program managers. The SPMs asked us to create these reports for them, so we did. And we felt that they shouldn't have anything that you don't, or they shouldn't have access to anything that you don't. So you have access to the M reports as well. Have a look at them and use them if you like. They're all to do with accountability. So I'm not going to go through the M reports today, really, mostly because it's all to do with accountability, and not everyone in attendance today will be working on accountability. And they're mainly for the use of the SPMs rather than centers. So that's the M reports. We've got the N reports. We'll be going over those a bit later. They say NPA. We should probably change that. We might get around to it. It's now NLAP rather than NPA. And then we've got the S reports, and S stands for services. So those are, well, that is the naming convention that we've got with our reports, and a little bit of background information on some of those reports as well. Now, I mentioned earlier a little cheat code for you. So the cheat code is this. So there are two of the standard reports that are used most often. One of them is for client counts, and the other one is for service counts. And we recommend using one of those reports each, more than the others. And as we can see here, we've got S01, S04.1, S04.2, all these different reports which count up your services slightly differently. So we've got two of those reports that we recommend using most often, and there's a little way to remember which one is which. So there's the C03, and as we can see here, the S01 is the other report that we recommend using if you're looking for counts of services. Let me flip back to the top. The C03 report is the other of the two reports that we recommend. And the little cheat code is that 3 is C. C is the third letter of the alphabet. So this report is C03, and the other one is S01, because making it the S20 report or whatever letter S is of the alphabet wouldn't make much sense. So it's S01. So C03 and S01, those are the two most commonly used standard reports, and we'll be having a good look at both of those pretty soon. Okay, so there's the naming conventions, our little cheat code. Let's move on to the client reports. So these will give you counts of data for your clients. So let's go and see what that means. And what I'm going to do, I'll show you the C01 report. So this is clients for, clients by priority group. So these are the kinds of things that these standard reports count. So if we click on the little link there, that opens the report, and this is what a report looks like for anyone who has never seen one before. Okay, so a little quick overview of what we've got going on here. We've got the filter panel over here on the left, and then this big main area is where our data will load once we hit load report. But as we can see, we've got some required information we need to put into our filter panel before we can load the report. Essentially, every report needs a date range. You can't run a report without a date range. So if you're looking for general types of data, what you could do is set the start date to about 1970 and set the end date to today, which would probably capture all of the data for your center. I will point out this little warning message we've got up the top. Please avoid doing that. You can try it if you like, but it may time out. You might get a timeout, and the data might not load if you try to do that. Anyway, So the reports need a start date. So I'm going to focus on about 12 months worth of data. So I'm just selecting that date from last year, and then I'm just going to select today. We know how these date pickers work. Funding categories, I'll just go over this quickly. You can select particular funding categories. Again, most of you probably know, but this is our CLC's instance, CLC's Australia instance of class, where we've got dummy data. We've also got a lot of dummy sort of stuff today. I'll probably be mentioning it a few times. This is not an actual funding category, neither is that. This is kind of stuff we've just set up. But if you do want to pick the data for only a specific funding category or set of funding categories, you can do that. If you want to select the data for all of the funding categories, what you can do is click in that box next to name. That will select all the funding categories in there. Then you simply click out to close that, and all of your funding categories are now selected. I'll briefly go over this catchment box and what we can do with it. So we're currently aggregating our data by center. That means that all of the data that we will see in this report in a minute will be all of the data for the center, but we could do it, no, we can't do that differently for this report, but I will show you that a little bit later. So I'm now going to hit load report, and the first thing I want to mention is that they never really display large enough. It's always too small. So I'm probably going to be doing this 1,000 times today. I won't go over how to do this in much detail because you're probably going to see it a bunch of times. You can use whatever size you want there. I'm just going to click page width, and we can see what data we've got. So here's the results for our C01 clients by priority group report. As it says there in the top of the report, we also get this information in here, just in case you want to know, or if your funding bodies want to know what's going on with this report. There's the date range, the funding categories that were selected, what kind of, we'll come back to these kinds of catchments and whatnot, and the name of the center. So let's have a quick look at some of the data in this report. We've got the center name and then the total number of clients over the past 12 months, 103 clients entered into our system. So that's the C01 report. This is what the reports look like a lot. And it breaks it down by demographics like gender, age, and then other things like income level, financial disadvantage, homelessness status, family violence, disability, mental illness statuses, things like that. Okay, I'm going to quickly flick over and have a look at the C03 report, because this is the one I mentioned before that is used most commonly when you're trying to get counts, when you're trying to get data for your clients and data about your clients. This is the report we recommend. Again, I'm just going to really quickly set this report up so we can have a look at some data, and I'll hit load report. Obviously, I'm going to have to make it large enough that we can all see the data. Let's try that. Okay, here we go. This is the C03 report. Okay, so again, we've got the same kind of setup. We've got the name of the report at the top, the filters in there, and this is telling us the demographics. I will come back to that a bit later. And as you can see, we've got a similar kind of thing here, our center name, number of clients, and then we've got the demographics there as well. Very similar, maybe a little bit more in there. This is the C03 report. I'll flick over now and show you the catchment, other things you can do with this. So that C01 report, we just had all the data for the center, everything that's entered into that instance of class. I can now change this. So I can get the data just for a single office location, and if I click on that, it will ask me which one. I could select one of those. I'm just going to select one at random. We'll just have a quick look. We've got 103 total clients. If I load that report now, we'll see that that number has changed. It's now at Okay, so 0 clients were entered in for that particular office location, which is a great place for me to let you know that this is all dummy data. So the data you're seeing may not make much sense, but we're not talking about the data today. We're talking about the reports and how to get data out of the reports, how to use that data as well. So in terms of catchment, you could get the data by the office location or by an outreach location, or you could aggregate the data by an administrative boundary. Now, this is going, and we will come back to this a bit later as well, but I'll go over it briefly. This will let us have a look at our clients and where our clients lived at the time that we delivered a service to them. So there's a whole bunch of options in here. We can get the data by suburb, by postcode. We've got statistical areas, SA 1, 2, 3, and 4, or we could choose a local government area. And you can add a boundary code. What's a good example? Say we wanted to see just the data for, I'm going to try, that's the postcode for Sydney. I'm going to load the report. So now what this report is going to do for us is it's going to show us the data of our clients. And as you can see here, the catchment is aggregated by administrative boundary, which is the postcode of 2000. So if we have a look in, our total clients now are 10. So for this postcode, there were 10 clients within that postcode. So if you wanted to find the number of clients for a particular postcode, you could absolutely do that. So those are the kinds of things that this report will do. I'm gonna skip over the rest of that now, and we are gonna come back to this report in a little while. Okay, let me move on. Service reports, counts of data for your services. I want to have a quick look at the S01 report. So I'm going to flip back to my list of reports. Where am I? I'm just scrolling through. The S01 reports, I'll have a quick look at this and show you what this report looks like when you load some data into it, which I will do right now. Just quickly loading some data into it, and we'll have a look at this report. Okay, so rather than clients, this will give us a count of services that we've delivered. So this is not really counting the, it will count. I wish it would run a bit faster. Anyway, there we are. Okay, great. So it's kind of counting, it will give us a few numbers to do with clients. So it gives us the number of, the total number of clients, how many of those clients were new clients, how many were repeat clients, how many were existing clients. If you want the exact definitions of exactly what that means, we have that information on our website, and I'll show you that a bit later. So now this report is breaking down the number of services we did in terms of the service types. So here's the number of informations we did within that time, that amount of time, the number of referrals, the advices, all the other different service types, and all of the representation services are all in there as well. So that's what that report can do. Again, we could do this by an administrative boundary just for a single office location. So if we wanted to know the number of legal advices that were done at office location X or office location number 4, we could find that data doing that. So that's what the service report will do for us. It gives us counts for the numbers of services that we do. I'm going to flick back over to the reports list. And as you can see, there are a number of reports in here which may be of use to you. Number of services by funding category, problem types. Often people want reports that give data according to which problem types have been selected. You can do that. Again, that's a fairly brief overview, but we've only got an hour scheduled in for today, so I might kind of quickly skip past that, even though that was a pretty quick look at the service reports. Again, if people do have questions, please pop them up in the questions functionality in your control panel. And I'll see if I can get Alex or Oliver to bring those to my attention. And I might skip on now, have a quick look at the NLAP reports, and we may come back to any questions on the client or service reports or anything else so far if they come up. Okay, the NLAP reports. So these are the N reports. So these are, let me remind myself, NLAP performance benchmarks. Yeah, okay. So these are the performance benchmarks that are set by the NLAP agreement. It used to be the MPA agreement. We've now got the new one. Again, we haven't changed that name. We should do that because these reports have been updated to reflect the benchmarks for NLAP rather than NPA. Okay. I'm now going to show you another quick way to find the reports that you want to use. And in doing this, I'm going to show you a couple of things. One, how to find them, and two, we'll see how many of these N reports we've got. So if I put in that search box under display name, an N and a 0, and I hit enter, that reduces this list from 65 items down to 8. So we've got 8 N reports there. Now I'll just show you one more thing. If I change that from N0 to N1, there's a couple more N reports here, the N11 and the N12 report. I will just bring to your attention that these are both drill down reports, so we're not going to be going through those today. I'm just going to flick that back over to the N0 reports and have a look at these. Again, 2 of these are drill down reports as well. And we'll just have a quick look at these. NPA performance benchmark is the N01 report. We've also got the N02, N04.1 and N04.2. We've got the N05 and the N06 facilitated resolution process outcomes. If you wanted to find data on that, there's that report for you. I'll really quickly show you N01, the NPA performance benchmark, and we'll see what the data looks like when we load data into this report. I'm just going to do this again really quickly. Okay, so just loading some data into this report. So this is what we see when we load this report. Okay, so these are our NPA performance benchmarks, and as you can see, basically what this report is telling us is that it's the percentage of representation services delivered to people experiencing financial disadvantage. This report says that our centre did 100% of services to people experiencing financial disadvantage. Your data will probably look different to that. I can't remember exactly what you're supposed to be delivering. I think it's something like 80 or 90%. I can't remember. But there's that report. We might have a quick look at one other, services to priority clients. We'll get a little bit more data out of this than we did the last one. I think this maybe gives you some data broken down by the demographics rather than just a fairly straight count. Again, we can load this data for no account. We can only load it for just the center. Okay. Yeah, so as I was saying before, you get the demographics in here, breakdowns of all the different kinds of demographics. Okay. Okay, that's kind of the N reports. I was going to say NPA, NLAP reports. If you do want help with these reports, or if you want to know more about these reports, that was something I forgot to mention earlier when I was saying that if you want access to more of the reports, you should ask your class administrator at your center. If you want to understand these reports more, and if you want to know how to use more of these reports, ask us at the help desk, and we'll help you there. and I'll show you how to do that later, just for anyone who may not be aware of that. Okay, so I'm going to move on again because we don't have a ton of time today. We're also getting into some of the more interesting things today. Okay, so what we are talking about here is telling stories with data. Excuse me, I've just realized I've just removed something that I needed. Okay, here we go. All right, telling stories with data. So I was listening to the radio yesterday, and someone was saying that they can put all the data in the world in front of a policymaker, and it's not going to make any difference. But when they tell that policymaker a story about that data, when they humanize the data and make it about actual people, that's when the policymakers become more engaged with the data. So here's a little quick overview of how we can tell stories with data, with the data that we get from class. So this is kind of about data analysis in a way. This is definitely not a data analytics 101, but what we're doing is kind of diving into our data, analyzing it a bit in order to be able to say something about the kind of work that we do. So I'm going to dive back into this C03 report. This is a really handy report. We can do a lot with it. It's quite powerful. And I'm going to show you some more of the things that we can do with this report and how we can tell stories with the data that we get out of this report. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is change the catchment back to all the data for our center, and I'm going to get rid of that. Now what I'm doing is looking at the demographics. Okay. Okay. So, sorry, I think I changed the demographic. Just let me load this report again really quickly, just so I can show you one thing. The total number of clients here, 103 clients. Okay. All right. Now we can start to have a look at the kinds of stories we want to tell. What do we want to know about these kinds of people? Okay, I've got one of these set up for you. I think I had another one. Let me see if I can figure out the other one as well. Let me change this demographic thing here. I'll change it from any. I'm changing the age group to 0 to 17. And then now I'm just going to load this report again. So we had 103 clients. So now if we have a look at the data, now that we've changed that demographic there, now it's down to 6. So that's a pretty small percentage of our clients that are aged 0 to 17, but that's not that interesting a story. That is probably something we would expect. However, if we have a look over here, so we've got a total of 6 clients, and these clients are all aged 0 to 17. Now, if we have a look down the end here, we see that this demographic here, the out of regional and remote clients, there's 1, which tells us that a pretty low number of our clients who are in that age range live in out of regional or remote areas. So the story we could tell here is that the vast majority, more than 90% of our clients who are aged between 0 and 17 live in cities or maybe towns. But that's one of the stories we could tell with the data that we've got. And something to note about this training session today is that these numbers are really low. We don't enter a lot of data into class, so this probably looks vastly different to what you would see when you load your data into class. And these kinds of notes, again, this is just dummy data. We don't really have 6 clients. We don't actually have clients at CLCs Australia. Once you're looking at data that's more like 600 clients, then you can start to tell much more interesting stories. Let me try one more. I'm going to flip that back to any. Now I'm going to have a quick look at this Indigenous Australians. Let me change that to yes, and then I'm going to load the report again. So with everything set to standard, In this report, we had 100 and something clients. So we've now got 3. Okay, I've done this differently. Just let me change one thing really quickly. 2016, 10th. Okay, sorry, I'm going to load this report again. Okay, so apologies for that. I hadn't quite set this up properly. All right, now we're ready to look at some data. Okay, so now we've got 12 clients. Okay, so what I did was changed this from any to yes. So these are just our Indigenous clients, Indigenous Australians. So of all these 12 clients, all 12 are Indigenous. So now if we have a look at something else here, what else have we got here that might be an interesting story to tell? This main language spoken at home, not English. We've got 5 clients in there. So of our 12 clients, all 12 are Indigenous and almost 50% of them speak a language other than English at home. So I don't know if that's an interesting story to tell or not. Again, this is kind of dummy data and kind of just a bit of a brief overview of the kinds of stories that we can tell about our clients and the ways that we can use these class reports to tell stories with our data. I'm not sure who considers that story about our 0 to 17 clients more interesting, or the one about our Indigenous clients. I'm sure everyone's different. Anyway, that's kind of telling stories with data. Kind of a little quick overview, a bit of a quick look at how we can do that. If you do want help telling stories with your data, again, come to us at the help desk and we'll come back to that again a bit later. Okay, telling stories with data. Okay, the next thing is heat mapping, and this is pretty interesting as well. So let me flip back over. Heat mapping is basically exactly what it sounds like. You can get a map and sticks heat areas on it. Let's go and have a quick look at one rather than me trying to fumble through an explanation of what it is. I will actually, now that I've said that, start with a bit of an overview of it. There's kind of a 3-step process for this. And again, I'm going through this pretty quick as well. The reason for that is that heat mapping is a bit tricky. I'm going to go through it quickly and we'll see how it works, but this took me quite a while to wrap my head around. So again, if you do want help making a heat map, definitely ask us at the help desk. I've done it for other people. I'm happy to do it for other people. Everyone else is at the help desk as well, and we might actually put a bit of a guide up on our website in the near future as well. So as I was saying, there's a bit of a 3-step process. First thing we need to do is get some data out of class. Step 2 is then formatting that data. The data's got to be formatted correctly, and I'll show you what that means in just a minute. Step 3 is loading this up to a government website to see our heat map. Okay, so I'm going to show you a file. What I did was I ran one of these C03 reports this morning because I figured I needed to test this to make sure I know how to do it so I can show it to you. So I just went export. Got some data out of a C03 report into a CSV file, which I have right here. Okay, so this is with the this is the CSV file with the data that I got out of the C03 report, and you might notice some differences, some odd things about this data really quickly. Let me flick back over to class and show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to change that back to any. All of these demographics were set to standard, just the usual response there. So it was the catchment. I did this by, I aggregated this data by an administrative boundary. It wasn't postcode, it was suburb. I ran that report, exported the data into a list. Now, you may also notice when you get this report loading, you get all the data for all of these demographics, gender, age, etc. I removed all of that from this file here. So I went through, I deleted everything except for, so this is how it works. I'll go through it quickly. If you're like me, you won't be able to get this right on the first try. If you can get this right on the first try, I would be very impressed. Anyway, the way you format your data is that you need a single row of headers, and then you have your data. So here we've got suburb names, and then as we can see, the number of clients in each of the suburbs. Now I'll highlight this field here, and I'll get onto that in just a minute, but basically what we're talking about is that you can't have any data anywhere in this report that the map can't map, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. If the software that we're using, the online software that we're going to use in a minute, can't put the data on a map, it can't be in this file. Okay. That's how the formatting works. We can show you how to do that if you like. Now, as for this cell in this file, we've got a little bit of a code here, and I'll show you where to get them. So let's dive back over to Chrome here. We're in Google Chrome. Now, you may want to make a note of this. I realized this morning, I think the note I have of this is in a notepad that I have at home, not in the office where I am. So I had to remember this. And thankfully I can. Anyway, you may want to make a note of CSV GEO, AU. As you can see, I did search for this. That's the result of it. Anyway, if you make a note of that, this is the search that you need to do to get those codes. And you do need a code in your file if you're going to do a heat map. I'm going to hit enter, and this is the result we get. As you can see, I've already clicked on that once today. This is the file that we need. It's a GitHub web page. It's a page on the GitHub website. CSV GEO AU, that's the one we need. Let's just click there and have a quick look at it. Once we get in here, there's a whole bunch of codes. I'm just going to scroll down. I'm not going to read everything for you. I'm just going to show you what's in here. There's a whole bunch of stuff. None of this I'm even touching on. Okay, here are our codes, and there's a whole bunch of them. So you can get codes based on the state or territory. There's the statistical areas. I'm going to keep going because there is a lot of it. Greater capital city statistical areas, significant urban areas. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Mesh blocks, indigenous locations or areas, remoteness areas, a whole bunch of stuff, local government areas. So you can get all the data out of class based on all of these, or most of them, Commonwealth electoral divisions, state electoral divisions, and then you can use a heat map. You can make a heat map using any of these. Here's our one, state suburbs or suburbs. Let's have a quick look at our file, just really quickly. So I've got a list of suburb names. So I'm going to jump back over to this web page. So we're looking for suburbs. So we've got the name of the suburb. That's what we want. So we can get the code with the year, which we don't want. So just the code without the year. Here's our code here. That's the code. And if we have a look at our file, there's the code there. It's the same one. So that's how the data has to be formatted. It is a little bit tricky, but we're willing to help people on the help desk do that. Okay, so that's stage 2 of making a heat map, formatting the data. Step 3 is uploading it to National Map. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Google. I'm going to do a search for National Map, and as you can see, I searched for this morning as well. Okay, so this is a government website, National Map, and you are free to use it anytime you like. I may explain more about it in a bit, but not a bunch. Essentially, it's a government website with a whole bunch of data in it. You can also upload your data to it, and it will produce a heat map for you. It's a pretty great website. We really like it. So I'm going to click there to open the National Map website. If you want to make a note of the URL, it's nationalmap.gov.au, pretty easy to remember. I actually couldn't even remember that one today, but a search will bring it up pretty quick. And this is what happens when you load National Map. I'm not going to go over this. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to close that and show you how to make a heat map. Okay, so here's the national map, and there's our map. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is add our data to the map. So the way we do that is over here. So I don't really know what this is. What we want is this little button here. I clicked on that one this morning and then realized, oh no, that was wrong. We need this button here to load local data into it. So I'm going to click on that little button. And what we're doing is adding local data. So that's our data is local data. I'm going to click on that and it brings up this, the type of file. You just want to leave that on auto detect. It will detect the file that you're uploading itself. Click on browse. Here's my file here. I'm just going to double click on that one. That's going to load the data into the system. You can get errors in this, just so you know. I'm not really showing you what happens if there are errors in your data today. Just going through this really pretty quickly. We are starting to run out of time. Anyway, once your data does load into this website without errors, you can click on done. Up here, we've got this button, done. Click on that, and there's our map. And straight away, we can already see something. In Western Australia, let me step back. Just a really quick, just really quickly, I just need to step back. So over on this side, we can see what we're loading into this report is the number of clients. So if we zoom in on Western Australia a bit, we can see a couple of those suburbs are really quite big. So this one is kind of this, maybe this orange color, which is maybe that's 3. And this one is that color, so maybe that's 5 clients. Let me skip over to Sydney, and I'll show you a couple more things we can do here. And I'll keep my fingers crossed and hope it works properly. And I'll show you a bit more data and what it looks like. So this is Sydney, where we've got a bit of data entered into. I'm just going to get rid of that so we can see a bit better. Okay, there's a bit more data, and we can start to see some differences. There's a difference in the number of clients between that suburb and that one. Okay, that's kind of how the heat mapping works. I'll show you one more thing we can do with it, is that we can compare our data to government data. So if we have a look again in the left here, we've got this one data set, which is our data. I'm just going to minimize that, and there's our data set. What we can now do is add other data. And there's a whole bunch of options here. National data sets, and then you've got state data sets as well. I'm going to focus on data.gov.au. That's a good one. There's a lot of data in here. And going back to something I was saying earlier, the reason this exists is because I believe the reason it exists is that the government's required to have their data publicly available. So they created this, and everyone just dumps all their data in here. I don't know how well known this is, but it does exist because the data has to be made public, and this is where it is. So if you're looking for government data, you might find it here. Anyway, we've got a whole bunch of options. The AGD has got some data in here, which you might think is relevant to us. They've got the disaster events and category impact and location data. I don't even know what that is. If you want to have a look at that data, go ahead. The ABC's got some data. I'm going to focus on, where is it? The ATO. They have a whole bunch of data in here. Let's just have a quick look at the taxation statistics for the financial year of 2017 and 2018 for individuals. There's that data set, and now I can add that to the map, and that will take a little while to load because there's a lot of data. So as I was saying, my data set was pretty tiny. This ATO data set is fairly expansive, and this tells us exactly what we're looking at over here. I'm just going to minimize this so I can show you. There's our data set is there, and there's the ATO data set. It's kind of over the top of our data set though, but we can compare the two. If I click this button split, there we go. It usually does this wrong. It's added a second data set I don't want to look at that second data set. I don't know why it does that. Anyway, now we've got a split screen. So there's the ATO data and there's our data. So now we're comparing those two data sets, and what we can do is roll it over, and there's the data for that suburb from the ATO. There's ours, and they're clearly different colors. So you can make a comparison that way and do it for the whole map if you like. Okay. We do have about 10 minutes left, or we have about 10 minutes of scheduled time left. So I'm going to move on from heat mapping. So that was a fairly quick overview of heat mapping. Again, if you do want to do that and you can't make it work, ask us and we'll help you with it. Okay, heat mapping. Okay, let me have a quick look at printing and exporting. Yeah, this won't take long. I figured I should go through it. And as I was saying before, if you want, I did export this data. So if you run a data set and you want to work with that data set more, you can do that. You can export this data. If you want to present it to a funding body, a local member, someone like that, you could export it to a PDF that you could show to someone, or email to someone, export to CSV if you want to play with your data, or one of the Excel formats. You can export any of these standard reports to any of those file types. You can also print the results to a sheet of paper. You just click that print button, that opens your report in a new tab in your browser, and then you can just click print there. And now you can print the results of that report to a sheet of paper. Okay, so that's kind of exporting and printing. I did say that wouldn't take long. Fairly quick overview, but we kind of should know a bit about printing and exporting if we're in attendance at a more advanced class training session. Okay. Finding documentation and getting help. I always do this, or I do this during the general user and new user training session, which I hope everyone has seen at least once. I'm just going to show you information about these reports. I'm going to flick over to the class documentation. Okay, if you're looking for information about reports in the class documentation, try the admin manual, that's where it is. Click on the admin manual, and then we've got we don't have all the information about it. You want to click on reporting and accountability then, and that will give you the information just about reports, or reports and accountability. And here's the information about the standard reports that we've spoken about today. We've got information on do-it-yourself reports. What we are missing is information on the drill down reports, though we'll go over that kind of quickly tomorrow. So we're talking about standard reports today. I'll click on that one and we'll see what information we've got on our website about that. So client reports, service reports, the management reports. That's the NLAP reports. Again, we probably really should change that. The problem type reports, I probably should have mentioned that at some time during this training session as well. There's another type of standard report. There's one of them, it's the PT01. That will give you the top 20 problem types being used at your center. It's a fairly standard report. If you just give the report a date range and some funding categories, it will give you data. So that's where you get information on the reports from our website. And then getting help with any of these reports, click on help and support in that menu there. And that gives you information on our help desk and getting help and support about reports. I might not go over that in too much detail. I have done that before. I'll mention the email address if you don't know how to get help with the help from the help desk and would like to. Your first port of call is probably this email address, icthelp@clcs.org.au. Fire us an email there and you'll get a response from the help desk there. Okay. Okay. Yes, I hope this has been helpful. It's a fairly quick look at standard reports, although we've broken up the reports training session. We used to do standard and DIY reports in about an hour and a half. So we just had an hour looking at standard reports. So that's a slightly more in-depth look at standard reports. I might really quickly throw to Alex and ask if there are any questions that I could handle right now.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for that. No, it looks like everybody's had their questions answered. If you do have a question, though, that we haven't got to, as Sam said, you can get in touch with us at icthelp@clcs.org.au. But Ollie has been answering questions super fast in chat. So thanks, Ollie.
Thanks, Ollie. Thanks, Alex. And thanks to everyone for being in attendance. It looks like we might be able to wrap this one up a few minutes early, but it's only a few minutes, but I suppose that's always nice. Okay, I hope that has helped. Again, thank you for being in attendance. We really like giving these training sessions. We understand classes it's a pretty intensive system, for want of a better euphemism. Anyway, yeah, we hope that helps you helps you find ways to get your data out of class. Okay, thanks everyone. Hope you found this session really useful. So bye from us. We hope you all have a very nice afternoon. So bye from CLCs Australia.